What I'm inviting kulo nyaka siqala nakule nkonzo siqala kakhulukazi in the church, but more broadly in our society. Ukuthi let us start with a new thought. Let us start with a new thought. Let us start with a new idea. Let us start the year with a new thought and a new idea.
Amen.
There are things that we can build upon, but in order to build upon those things even, there has to be a new thought. There has to be a new idea. We do not need new people. From wherever. It is people who transform their thinking and their minds and start seeing things differently and thinking about things differently.
Amen.
If there's anything that is a prayer in my heart, for our government, for our leaders in various sectors, but for the church, is for us to have a new thought.
Amen.
There would not have been a new covenant if there was not a new thought in God.
Amen.
There would not have been a new covenant which we are part of if God did not have a new thought
Amen.
and a new idea. The creativity of God, which we see in Genesis, starts with a thought and an idea, and it is followed with action.
Amen.
It is followed with action. God is a thinking God.
Amen.
God is a thinking God. We look at God from many angles, but one of the things that we know and we see in the progress of humanity, God is a thinking God.
Amen.
And he would not have given us the thinking abilities, that the mental faculties, the executive faculty, it is the executive yomuntu. God would not have given us that and called it the executive, where our creative powers are, if God himself was not a thinking God.
Amen.
When God says, I know the thoughts I have and the plans I have, my thoughts are higher than yours, he is revealing a part about himself. He is a thinking God.
Amen.
And therefore, in his thinkingness, he is a creative God who constantly comes up with new thoughts.
Amen.
Amen. Sometimes when God is quiet in our situations, he's actually sitting back and thinking. And thinking. How do I change this situation and reveal a new thing to these people?
Amen.
So in as much as God knows the end from the beginning, along the way, God himself comes up with new thoughts.
Amen.
And new ideas.
Amen.
Amen. He comes up with new thoughts and new ideas. And so people who are made in the image of God cannot sit back and not think about new things.
Amen.
And I'm not talking about recycling old thoughts and bringing them up as though they are new. We don't recycle anything. New, fresh thoughts, new, fresh ideas.
Amen.
Because for this nation to be reborn, uma efika uJesu ekhuluma ngokuzalwa kabusha, which was a new thinking to that society, ababengakazi bayizwe, he's talking about a new thought, a new idea. And so when he talks about reborn, rebirth, ukuzalwa kabusha, and the second birth, he's actually saying God has a new idea.
Amen.
And this new idea uNkulunkulu anayo will not work in this old design and this old order of things. And so there has to be a new order of things. There has to be a new design. There has to be a new creation. There has to be a new person.
Amen.
But God will not kill the person. God will simply change the person. Azalwe kabusha. And they couldn't understand that, because they were working on the old thought, the old form, the old system, the old religion, the old teaching, the old doctrine. Everything of theirs was just regurgitation of izinto abatshelwa zona ngaphambili. And so there was no space for something new. And God said, no, in order for me to create a new thing, I need a new platform, a new environment, a new people, a new nation. And that's how we were born.
Amen.
That's how we were born. And a new thing was created. In order for our nation to be reborn, and we all know deep in the chambers of our hearts that this nation needs to be born again.
Amen.
Ukuthula.
Amen.
This nation needs to be born again. Angikhulumi about being born again in the same way that as Christians we talk about being born again. But this nation, South Africa, needs to be born again.
Amen.
It was born in 1994. It was born in 1994. And there were good foundations that were set in 1994. And so much good has happened over the years. But more than 2 decades later, it is very clear, Guti, there is natural decay. And there's also voluntary decay and corruption. But in order for us to be new and to experience a new life in our own country, something new has to be born in our society.
Amen.
South Africa has to be born again.
Amen.
South Africa has to be born again.
Amen.
In other words, 1994 has to happen again. Not in the same way that it happened then, but in a new way, in a new way. But there has to be rebirth of this nation. So everything that we've been going through, I believe, everything that we've been going through, it is nature and God himself, the Spirit, telling us and inviting us and calling us to say, you cannot continue.
Amen.
Something new has to come out. You cannot continue. Now we can choose to hold on to what happened in 94. And we can choose to worship that and try to rebuild that. And I'm not going to get political and talk about all sorts of narratives that we say politically in order to sustain the pillars of the old order. We can choose to do that, but nothing new will come out of that. Absolutely nothing new will come out of that.
Amen.
Or we can let go of that and say we are being called into something new.
Amen.
And we will give birth to it.
Amen.
Now it starts with you, it starts with me, it starts with the church. It starts with you, it starts with me, it starts with the church.
Amen.
This new thought, this new thinking, this new idea that I'm talking about, this creative God, this creative spirit, ayenzeki nje in nothingness. It happens in the spirit. It doesn't happen in nothingness. It happens in the spirit. The creative thinking, the new thinking originates in the spirit. And who are the custodians of the spirit? Who are the custodians of the spirit? And so if we are the custodians of the things of the spirit, we are the ones who have the responsibility to facilitate the rebirth of our nation.
Amen.
The rebirth of our people, the rebirth of our society, and indeed the rebirth of our nation.
Amen.
It starts right here in this room. And in every room where there are true worshippers praying in the true spirit, it starts right in there.